Was Nokia ready for the iPhone? In 2004, Nokia built a touchscreen smartphone, not a concept. A working device, full touchscreen, internet connectivity, app capability. 3 years before the iPhone, it never shipped. By 2013, Nokia's mobile division was gone, sold to Microsoft for $7.2 billion that Microsoft would write off almost entirely within 15 months. That's the historical record. However, this is the story you have not been told. The Nokia story is about market forces, and what happens when an organization watches 6 of them arrive in sequence and misreads every single one. The readiness framework consists of 6 variables. For an organization to be ready, they must consider these variables to be successful with change. Number 1, the interface revolution. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs held up a phone and said, "An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator." Inside Nokia, the response was immediate and technical. The iPhone specifications were inferior. No 3G, no MMS. A camera that ranked behind Nokia's mid-range devices. That analysis was correct, and that was exactly the problem. The market force was not the hardware, it was the interface. A touchscreen that made the phone feel like a different kind of object entirely. The readiness variable that breaks this market force is context. Nokia had already built a touchscreen smartphone in 2004. They understood the hardware completely. What they did not understand was that the interface was not a feature. It was the competitive battleground itself. Commitment confirms the failure. After the 2004 prototype, Nokia's touchscreen program was left underfunded, competing for resources inside a matrix structure built to protect the product's already generating revenue. Nokia saw the interface revolution coming and chose not to fund it. The platform war. By 2007, the mobile market had quietly become a platform war, and Nokia was defending the wrong fort. Symbian had been built for feature phones. Limited memory, slow processors, no expectation of third-party software at scale. iOS was built for a different world entirely. In 2015, 2 professors from INSEAD published a study based on 76 interviews across Nokia's engineering and management hierarchy. What they found was clinical. Nokia's software developers knew Symbian was critically inadequate by 2007. Not behind, not aging. Fundamentally incapable of competing with what Apple had built. The readiness variable that broke this market force is informational assessment. The information existed at every level of Nokia's organization. But Nokia had built a culture in which delivering bad news carried a specific professional risk. Telling your superior that your platform was fatally compromised was not seen as honesty. It was seen as weakness. Middle managers were, in the words of the researchers, afraid to deliver the full severity of the software threat to senior leadership. Effort sealed Nokia's fate for the platform war. Rather than pivot to MIMO, Nokia's Linux-based alternative, the organization continued directing its engineering effort toward extending the life of a platform its own engineers had already written off. Nokia's people were working hard, in the wrong direction, on a platform they already knew was defeated, the app economy. In July 2008, Apple launched the App Store. 10 million downloads in the first weekend, 1 billion within a year. The App Store was not a feature, it was a new economic model, one that converted a phone into a platform, and a platform into a marketplace where third-party developers generated value without Apple spending $1 to create it. Nokia had an answer. It was called OV Store. The readiness variable that was lacking for Nokia for this market force was value. Nokia's entire value proposition had been built on hardware, premium materials, technical specifications, physical engineering that could be measured and priced. The App Store was a software economics model. The revenue wasn't in the device. It was in the ecosystem surrounding the device. Nokia's organizational structure had no mechanism for valuing that, because no Nokia division owned it, and no Nokia P and L could capture it. Efficacy delivers the verdict for Nokia battle in the app economy. OV Store launched with fewer applications, worse developer tooling, and a payment infrastructure that developers consistently described as difficult to build on. Nokia was not failing to try. Nokia was trying inside a value framework that made the right kind of trying structurally impossible. The experience economy. From 1990 to 2006, Nokia won on specifications. Better cameras, longer battery life, stronger signal. A global distribution network that reached 150 countries. Those advantages were real. And then the consumer moved. Not to better specifications. To a different experience entirely. Nokia was not ready for this move. Steve Jobs did not sell the iPhone as a phone with better numbers. He sold it as the most magical device ever created. That was not marketing language. It was a fundamentally different competitive frame. Nokia's competitive intelligence was built on a specification matrix: processor speed, camera resolution, battery hours, network compatibility. When the iPhone launched below Nokia's specification ceiling on nearly every measurable dimension, Nokia's internal assessment registered it as inferior. The market disagreed, completely, immediately, and permanently. Nokia's engineering culture valued what could be measured and documented on a data sheet. The consumer had begun valuing something that could only be felt, not measured with a protractor. Nokia had no instrument to read that signal. Their entire competitive framework was built for a market that had just changed the rules. The Android Ultimatum. In 2008, Google launched Android, open, free to manufacturers. Architected for the internet-native smartphone era that Symbian could not support. Within 3 years, Android was the fastest-growing mobile operating system on Earth. Samsung adopted it. HTC, Motorola, LG, Sony. The entire Android ecosystem was assembling around Google's platform. Nokia watched all of it happen, and in February 2011, made the most consequential strategic decision in the company's history. This market force was broken by informational assessment. Android's trajectory was documented and discussed in every technology publication on Earth. Stephen Elop's Burning Platform memo demonstrated clearly that Nokia's leadership understood the severity of their position. What followed that understanding was a commitment to Windows Phone, a platform with approximately 2% global market share, over Android, which was already winning. Commitment delivers the verdict. This was not a decision made in ignorance. The data was available. The severity was acknowledged. The commitment that followed was genuine and pointed directly at the wrong destination. Genuine commitment applied to the wrong direction does not stabilize a company. It accelerates its decline with certainty and speed. The Duopoly Consolidation. By 2012, Apple and Samsung captured approximately 90% of global smartphone profits. The market had not fragmented. It had consolidated, with extraordinary speed, around two ecosystems. Apple owned the premium consumer experience. Samsung owned the Android hardware supply chain. Nokia, aligned with Windows Phone, had no lane in this race. The readiness variable that was obviously lacking was context. Nokia's leadership did not see duopoly consolidation as an inevitability. They believed a credible third ecosystem could still emerge. The consumer had already decided otherwise. Efficacy closes the assessment. Nokia still had genuine engineering capability. Supply chain reach into 150 countries. A brand recognized in markets Apple had not yet fully penetrated. The Lumia hardware was, by specification, competitive. But capability without a platform is infrastructure with no highway to build on. Nokia had the tools, but it had no strategic lane and no ecosystem capable of creating one. The interface revolution, Nokia had the prototype, did not fund the battleground. The platform war, F. The engineers knew Symbian was dead. Fear-ensured leadership never heard the full truth. The app economy, F. Tried to answer a software economics problem with hardware economics thinking. The experience economy, F. Entered with a specification manual. The consumer had already changed the rules. The Android Ultimatum, F. Saw Android winning, yet committed to Windows Phone. The data did not change the call. The duopoly consolidation, D, had the hardware capability, had no ecosystem platform to put it on. Overall market forces readiness, F, not a failure of capability. A failure to read and react to market forces in plain sight. In short, a lack of readiness. 6 market forces arrived at Nokia's door between 2004 and 2013. Nokia was aware of most of them. They had engineers who understood the platform war, researchers who had already built the answer to the interface revolution, leadership that acknowledged, in writing, that the platform was burning. What they did not have was a culture willing to act on what it knew, a value system capable of funding what it had not yet monetized, a decision-making structure that could translate correct information into correct action. Market forces do not wait for organizational culture to catch up. They arrive, they pass, and they leave behind the companies that were not ready to move with them. Nokia is not a disruption story. It is a story about what it costs when an organization watches disruption happen and cannot unlock the internal machinery to respond. The iPhone did not defeat Nokia. Nokia's own internal architecture defeated Nokia. Disruption didn't wait. They did. If you are leading a team right now, name the market forces arriving at your door. Then ask whether your organization has the culture, the value system, and the commitment to move with them. In short, are you ready? If the answer is uncertain, Nokia provides the case study. We are recalculating, where every failure has a framework and every framework has a grade. We are sponsored by the Readiness for Change Institute. Want to learn more? Check out the description in the link below. We'll see you next time when we analyze another case from history and recalculate.